It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. While the ceasefire with Iran is a welcome development, especially in light of Donald Trump's apocalyptic threats to end Iran's entire civilization, the terms of the deal Trump is likely to agree to will almost certainly amount to a strategic humiliation for the United States. Even MAGA influencers aren't falling for the BS. The critics range from white supremacist lunatics like Nick Fuentes to the supposed adults in the room like Mark Levin. And to pretend that this enemy hasn't killed American soldiers and American citizens is ridiculous. To pretend this enemy is executing its people left and right as we speak. This enemy is shooting missiles into not just Israel, I think some of the Arab countries tonight, as well as we've entered into a total ceasefire. Even Fox News wasn't falling for the regime's propaganda. And I'm talking about the Trump regime, not the Ayatollahs. But I will say that the president's demands, we have not reached any of those objectives. I have full confidence that the president is going to find some way to make this happen. But he said that we want to dismantle all major nuclear facilities. That has not happened. The end of uranium enrichment on the soil, they're still wrenching. The transfer of the enriched uranium stockpiles out of Iran, that hasn't happened. The acceptance of intrusive international inspections, they're still not willing to do that, and they have not suspended their ballistic missiles program. They're still firing amok. America is fast approaching a major defeat in the Middle East. It's hard to know who to believe about the upcoming negotiations, but Iran will almost certainly emerge with greater control over the Strait of Hormuz, and the Iranian regime remains intact. Senator Chris Murphy summed it up with this post: they will control and toll the strait for the first time. They keep their nuclear program, they keep their missiles. What a disaster. One of the things the U.S. will have to grapple with in the coming years is the total loss of credibility in the region. Not only were we unable to protect our allies from Iranian attacks, we could not even protect our own troops on our own bases. Some of which, by the way, I've been stationed at. Iran's greatest victory might simply have been to demonstrate America's vulnerability. I spoke to Kris Goldsmith about this. He's an army vet who saw combat in this part of the world, and his thoughts, like mine, are with those who bore the brunt of the Trump regime's insane march to war. Here's our conversation. Kris, thanks so much for joining us. It looks like the American superpower isn't so super when it comes to our war of choice against Iran, our inability to maintain our own bases in the region. I mean, we've already sent the carrier battle groups packing because they're not safe in the Gulf. We can't even defend our own bases. Bases I have deployed to, by the way. We just evacuated, I think, thousands of personnel out of a naval security group, or Fifth Fleet, really, in Bahrain, a base that I spent more time than I care to remember at. And now we are leaving that burden to, I guess, family support groups to accommodate these soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines being repositioned for their own safety. What a strategic embarrassment for the United States. Yeah, I want to encourage people to go seek out the NPR article because it is enlightening, I think, because a lot of Americans truly believe that we intercept every missile and drone, and that we are untouchable, and that our armor protects us, and that our bases are heavily fortified. But you know, Pete Hegseth might have believed that a couple months ago, but now the facts on the ground show that we are having troops who are being injured and killed. Important in this is not just that the families who are stationed with these sailors are evacuating. NPR talks about a woman with a 2-week-old and a dog in a carrier and suitcases traveling by herself. And these family groups outside of the U.S., military outside of the U.S. government, nonprofits having to come in and physically help them evacuate because they can't do it on their own. But we're also doing things like evacuating our bases and putting our troops into public hotels, into the civilian populace in these countries. And according to the laws of war, we're not supposed to use human shields. That's something that we criticize our adversaries for doing all the time. But here the United States is putting giant targets on civilian populaces because we are putting troops in hotels next to, people who are traveling on business. There could be other Americans in those hotels who have no idea that Russia is helping Iran target those hotels because that's where troops are. I mean, this goes far outside of affecting the military and military families. Hey everyone, it's Ken. I've got another amazing writing retreat to share with you. It just opened up and it sounds incredible. It's in the City of Lights, Paris, France, and it's hosted by two award-winning writing coaches, Brandy Larson and Annie Kelly. Just imagine writing in a place like this. Telling stories is what makes us human, and we all have those stories in our pockets about love and loss, joy and grief. Let Brandy and Anori help you pen your stories on the page. You'll gather each morning in an historic cafe, museum, bookstore, or garden to focus on craft and storytelling. And afternoons will be spent soaking in the culture, sights, and rich literary history of one of the world's most beautiful cities. This once-in-a-lifetime retreat is for writers of all ages and experiences who long to build community, search for answers, and dismantle the roadblocks that stand in our way. Anmir and Brandy practice writing as a form of healing, and don't we all need that right now? If you want to write beautiful prose in a beautiful place, join Anne-Marie and Brandy in Paris this summer. No more excuses. This world-class coaching team will help you put your stories on paper in an amazing setting. Join them. Click the link in the show notes to learn more. What we haven't talked about nearly enough, and this is an indictment of the media broadly, not, Midas touch, but it's the Iranians' remaining capability. The Pentagon is high-fiving itself every day for having taken out some percentage of their missile launching capability, for having taken out their Navy and their Air Force. But that was never their real strength. It's their asymmetric capability. It's the 100,000 plus hardened IRGC fighters who don't need a AAC-130 to get to a target to jump in and wreak havoc. They need a fishing boat or they need a sleeper cell. And I think there's a reason that some of the strategic targets around the Gulf have been left untouched by Iran. That's their main chip. They just hit a desalination plant in Kuwait, along with, I think, a terminal or an oil facility of some kind. And they did that today in the lead up to this ultimatum that Trump has set for later as a signal that they have an enormous ability to retaliate, and they haven't even deployed their most effective resource yet, which are those commandos which are willing to die for the regime. Yeah, and just before we're filming this now, Donald Trump issued a threat saying that he was going to kill an entire civilization. He said an entire civilization will die tonight. I don't think he understands that the globe is round and that 8 p.m. Eastern is not nighttime in Iran, but we'll leave that aside. He is treating this like one of his reality TV shows, and that threat that he is issuing, saying that he is going to murder an entire civilization, that is a threat to genocide, and this is, I fully expect that we are going to normalize this. Our politicians on our side are not going to act like this is the threat that it is. Sadly, we are not going to see Democrats stand up, and there will be a few who do, but Democrats will not stand up and force Republicans to remove this man from office. If threatening genocide, threatening war crimes is that explicitly saying, I will murder an entire civilization if you don't do XYZ to lower oil prices, if that is not a high crime or misdemeanor, then there's no point of having a Congress. There's no point of having, the separate branches of government. We have fallen as a democracy. If the President of the United States can threaten genocide and go unbothered by the other branches of government, it's a sad reality that we're living in. I mean, we shouldn't accept it, but that's the world we live in. Well, let me hold out as the example of how to push back against this kind of insanity from the Trump regime. Ted Lieu, who said this on X, and I assume it was in reaction to Trump threatening genocide and the implicit threat of nukes. And I want to talk about that in a second, but Tedl said the UCMJ and federal law prohibit war crimes. That's been said before. Striking civilian infrastructure that causes disproportionate civilian harm constitutes war crimes. That's been said before. Here's where the line needs to be drawn. You will disobey those illegal orders. And this was a post on X to the Joint Staff. You will disobey those illegal orders. If you commit war crimes, the next administration will prosecute you. It's about damn time. That's what people in the military, not to mention ICE and CBP and the entire Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, that's what the functionaries of this regime need to hear. If you commit war crimes, if you violate the law, the next administration will prosecute you. Not the next administration will be disappointed in you. Not, your children will be embarrassed that that you ever wore the ICE uniform, they will prosecute you, and if found guilty, you will go to jail. Thank God for Ted Lieu standing up and saying that. I'm sure he's going to catch a ton of heat, but he needs more people to join him. We have reached a point of absolute absurdity where I think that this demands absolute obstructionism from Democrats and from the handful of Republicans who are taking Donald Trump seriously and don't want to see our sons and daughters go to war, our global economy enter not a recession but a depression, and set off not a nuclear arms race but a nuclear war. This has reached the nightmare levels that I was born into, us winning the Cold War. This my generation, the millennial generation, we thought the Cold War was over, but now we've got something even worse. We've got a maniac who's in charge of the world's strongest military. If history were any guide, and I think we should probably give up on this administration drawing any lessons from history, but this is part of what engendered 47 years of hatred and chance to death to America. It was our support for a violently repressive regime, the regime of the Shah, which had its own secret police. And I think we're making the same mistakes again. Not a defense of the current Iranian regime, which by every account is even worse than the Shah's regime, but by blowing up girls' schools and lying about it by saying we're going to wipe out their civilization, you're not engendering the kind of trust that is going to lead to the overthrow we've been promised. Kris, we got to leave it there, but I want to give you the last word, because I don't see a way out of this other than a deal that is infinitely more favorable to the clerics in Iran than the JCPOA was, and allowing them to set up a toll booth on the Strait of Hormuz, and then, of course, Donald Trump declaring victory. I think that's where this is headed if we're lucky. Yeah. The one thing that I can leave people with is that we are all going to have to get prepared to do more, all of us, all. We are going to have to go beyond the lines that we have currently set. We can all resist more. We can all resist harder. I think that if this war continues, if the President of the United States continues to do things like issue threats of genocide, I think it's becoming a reality that more Americans are going to be accepting of the idea that we need things like a general strike. It's not enough to just call on our members of Congress, most of whom will not go to the level that I think is necessary to resist, to be absolute and complete obstructionists, no budgets, no confirmations. Hell, if I were in Congress right now, I'd be having trouble not getting in fistfights on the floor with people on the other side, because I think at this point that kind of thing is almost justified. I think that people need to start getting used to the idea that we're going to need a general strike. I think that people need to get to personally prepare themselves and their families for a little bit of austerity, because things are going to have to get worse for all of us in order to impose enough of a cost on this regime, the American regime, the Trump regime, to force a change course. So I want to encourage people to look at what their family needs and start preparing themselves for weeks of austerity. I think you might be right if I could find my own silver lining in that it's that the best hope we have of truly relegating Trumpism to the dustbin of history is making its adherents, its supporters realize what a terrible experiment that was. And even if they won't admit it openly, at least coming to the conclusion that we can never afford to do that again and turn the page. Of course, we have to hold the perpetrators accountable, but this is going to have to really hurt if we truly kill off MAGA and Trumpism once and for all. Absolutely. All right, Kris, thanks. We'll see you back here next week. Thanks, brother. Love this video. Support independent media and unlock exclusive content. Ad-free videos and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.